But essentially what we see here is that she has a shortened radius. It's a little bit hard to appreciate, but the ulna should meet the radius right here equally, and it's actually forward. So this whole bone is longer than this bone, and that causes what's known as joint incongruity. Okay. Oh no, she has to go potty.
Oh.
I'm sorry, buddy. So that can cause problems down the line. Now, right now, her elbows are comfortable, but over time, that kind of incongruity can cause joint inflammation, osteoarthritis, pain. Right now, she's not experiencing any of that, but that right there is kind of one of the problems that we want to try to get ahead of or address the best we can. Now, if this goes untreated as she's growing...
Do you want me to get that? I know you're already holding her.
No, you're good. I
sure? You're doing everything. I'm like holding the camera here.
As she's growing, that could basically be perpetuated and get worse.
Understandable.
So, she doesn't have any evidence of arthritis or pain right now. The idea here, now there's some other issues. She has joint incongruity. She also has something called procurvatum, which is a big word that essentially just means bowing of this bone here. So this is just a little bit more bowed than it should be, but that's also secondary to the arrest of the growth plate and the abnormal growth that she's been experiencing. The biggest problem though that she has is actually more evident. We'll come back to the femur in a bit. It's more evident here. So here, this bone, the radius here, should be coming more straight on and flat. Do you see how at the bottom here, and let me see if I can zoom in. Sometimes this can be quite finicky. It's not gonna let me do it, huh?
I don't know if that helps your video at all, sorry.
Oh, thank you, yeah. No,
okay, it's not gonna let me zoom in. But this should be coming kind of straight on to the wrist here. Okay. If you can see, if you can follow here, it actually makes this like sharp turn.
Yes.
So that's called valgus, and that's that exactly what we're seeing when she stands and she's turning outward. Now, this is probably the most severe of the deformities she has in her radius, and the one we would want to correct.
Gotcha.
And the hope would be that we could correct this deformity before, as she's continuing to grow, she gets more issues with her elbow incongruity. Because she's still growing. So all of this could get even kind of worse.
Does the incongruity ever, or any of these other deformities, do they ever impact further areas of the growth plate where it just continues?
They don't impact the growth plate, but they would impact her risk for arthritis. Essentially.
Gotcha.
And she will develop arthritis likely in that joint.
Yeah, unfortunately, an injury like that, just like us. You know, you're gonna feel it.
So at this point, whatever injury she's had, her body is kind of fixed. But now she has this abnormal conformation of her bones. So that is going to predispose her to developing pain and arthritis lifelong. So we would want to correct that. Absolutely. And especially now when she doesn't have arthritis.
We're going to correct it 100%.
What that correction would involve would be some sort of osteotomy. So making a cut in her bone and correcting the deformity itself. We can do that in a couple of different ways, and we don't need to get into kind of the minutia of the details because ultimately it kind of leads to the same thing, but sometimes we'll do something called a closing wedge osteotomy where we take like a pizza slice wedge out of the bone and then squeeze the bone together so that it's straighter.
Okay, I got you.
And then we have to, exactly. And then we've basically broken the bone, right? So we have to put it back together. Mm-hmm. We usually do that with a bone plate and screws. Okay. So she would get a bone plate to keep that together. The other thing we can do is called an opening wedge. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the opposite. We're still making a bone cut, but we're actually opening it to resolve that incongruent angle of the bone. And then we still put a bone plate and screw on. The difference there is that now there's this like opening there. Mm-hmm. The pro with that is that we're lengthening the bone. Now this bone is shorter than the ulna, so that just in chatting with the group today, that is something that seems appealing
Nice.
for her. So I think we still need to review these and kind of chat and see what we think would be best. But either
I'm sorry.
either way, that's kind of the idea of what we would want to do for her for the forelimb.
Gotcha.
And again, the big thing with this is that we want to do this now when
Absolutely.
she doesn't have arthritis.
Yes, like I said, if business office can work with me a little bit, I'm more than willing to do it now. Fortunately, when we scheduled this, we thought it was
Yeah.
a 30-day deferment, and we were all prepared for that. So.
Well, yeah, and when
Yeah.
we first initially brought her in, of course, we thought we could do pins. But
Oh,
that's
well, yeah,
just-
I know the estimate's gone up quite a
Yes.
bit too, I'm sure. So,
So,
yeah.
and by now, I don't mean like today, I think, if we can do this within the next week.
Okay, yeah, next
week or
weekend is,
two.
I think, what we discussed for the fundraising goal. We already have a GoFundMe up. I have 2 other people with conference calls tonight
Okay.
at 8:30 and 9 for the
Okay,
goal. So
great.
if they're in California, I'm hoping they
Yeah.
can help us out big time. We'll see.
Okay. So that's the forelimb. Does that kind of plan? I know it's a different plan, but does that make sense?
It
why
does.
we
I guess
came-
my only question I was going to ask is, are those 2 options mutually exclusive? Is it either taking the wedge or lengthening the bone, or is there a way to take the angle out and lengthen the bone simultaneously?
Both ways are achieving the same end goal.
Okay.
The first way is a little bit more stable because we're not leaving an opening,
Okay, gotcha.
but we're losing length of the bone.
Gotcha.
The other way is still achieving the same end goal of fixing the angle, but then we have a opening that has to heal over. But again, she's a puppy. Their growth potential, their ability to heal is quite excellent.
Okay. Yeah, I think that might be the.
So
I like that.
I think ultimately, whatever the I will defer to
Oh, yeah,
my
your team,
attending
exactly,
surgeons
yes.
and what they think is
Mhm.
going to be best for her in their experience.
Perfect.
But those are some of the ideas we were talking about.
No, I think that's great.
Okay. Now for the femur. The femur is actually a little bit more difficult. Unfortunately, this has also tried to heal, but not doing a good job. So this is what we would call a malunion of a fracture. The other one is it's also it fixed itself, but in the wrong wrong conformation. But this is what we would call a malunion. So
Okay.
there has been some healing that's been trying to happen, but it is totally not in the right place there. So these are what we call the femoral condyles. Obviously, you can tell, you don't need to know too much about anatomy to know that this looks abnormal, but
Yes.
these are what we say caudal, so they're caudally displaced, meaning they're behind the femur,
Okay.
and they're farther up, so proximally displaced. These should be sitting down here, essentially, these condyles. So what we can see here is that we have also got involvement of the joint because these femoral condyles obviously are part of the knee joint there. We also have effusion, and then this bright area here, this zone of brightness you can see is all soft tissue swelling, which if you feel her knee, you can feel that.